And folks, the reason we're going to talk to David today is that you are an adherent to the principles of FIRE. So while you're not nomadic yet, for those of my audience who are still working towards it, they can learn a lot from you. Why don't you go ahead and explain to us what is FIRE and how you're using it to get ready to go full time?
Okay, so FIRE is financial independence, retire early. I was practicing the tenets of FIRE well before I even knew that FIRE even existed. I've only known FIRE for about 4 or 5 years. Over the last 30 years of my married life, we've practiced it, sometimes to the extreme. A little bit of background. My wife and I, we've been together about 30 years. We decided we needed to buy a house. We needed about $30,000, which would have been $22,000 for a down payment and about $8,000 in other costs. So we had to save $30,000, and we felt like we needed to do it pretty quickly. We decided that we were going to really dig our heels in and save that money. So what we did was, rather than saving what money we had left over, we funded our savings first. So what we did was, we went out and bought a poster board. Down in the lower left-hand corner, we put the number 0. And then in the top right-hand corner, we put 30,000. We drew a line between the two, and down along the bottom, we put in some months. I forget how long it was. It was a short period of time, maybe a couple of years. So then we said, okay, well, we're going to live, in such a way as we stay above that line. And no matter what, that's what we're going to do. So that is one of the tenets of the FIRE movement, is to fund your savings first. So that's exactly how we did it. We did a couple of things. I went to a guy that owned several houses. He was a wealthy man. And I knew that one of his tenants, who happened to be a friend of mine, was moving out. And I went to him and I said, I can imagine being a landlord is kind of a pain in the butt. Nobody cares about your houses, but I'd like to rent your house, and I'd like for you to give me the cheapest rent you possibly can. In return, I'm going to fix up your house. I'm never going to call you. I'm going to be the best tenant you ever had. I'm going to be like a son to you. So he agreed. We got super cheap rent. Then on top of that, we rented out one of the rooms. We were living in that house for about $350 a month. And in California, that's rock bottom.
Unheard of.
Some of the things we did, I don't believe that I should have owned a used car or bought a used car. And the reason for that is my wife and I both grew up in abject poverty. And my wife has very few rules in this marriage. But one of those rules is, when she turns the key, that car starts. So I felt it necessary to always buy a new car. I always have. That new car, back then didn't have power locks, didn't even have air conditioning. It was the buy it, one at this price car. And, we kept that car for a very long time. So if you consider the initial cost of the car, the number of years we used it, we really did pretty well with it. You have to do what works for you.
So basically, the principles you were living by was reduce your costs as much as possible. So you bought an inexpensive car. It was new, but when you divide it out by if it lasted 10 or 20 years, then it was really cheap per year.
Exactly. We used to have what we call Pizza Friday. So we could go to Little Caesars and we could pick up 2 pizzas for, maybe $5 or something like that. And that was our big night together as a family. For $5, we would sit around and, maybe watch a little TV and enjoy this pizza. To be honest with you, some of my fondest memories are pizza night. And even today, every now and then we'll have a pizza night. So your life is what you make it. It's not about things and money.
So really, that's the core principle of the FIRE movement, is to maximize savings and live very frugally and minimally and maximize all the savings you can. Did you have a goal for a savings rate?
Our goal was 50%. Back then, I made about $30,000 a year. And my goal was to save $30,000 in 2 years. That's a pretty steep angle. It was tough. In hindsight, it wasn't all that tough. I was kind of young. It was fun to do. I'm not exactly sure that my wife enjoyed the ride as much as I did. We did it. 50%. Fast forward to more recently, my father died when I was very young. He was 47 years old. I was 9. I'd always thought that he could have taken better care of his health and could have been around longer. It was my goal throughout my earlier life to beat him, to live past the age of 47. And just past my 48th birthday, 48 years old, I got him. About a month later, I woke up one morning and had a stroke out of nowhere. They basically chalked it up to a fluke and things were going well. And about 14 months later, I had a second, much more dangerous stroke. And then about a month later, we discovered the source of that was a genetic defect that I got from my father. Add to that, I also had a hole in my heart. So I was wrong about my father all those years. I also had this hole in my heart. We tried to have a device inserted that wasn't even FDA approved. It didn't work. We got it well under control now with medication, but it told me that we really have a limited time on this earth. But you can see from around 2013 where we really dug in and started saving again, much like we did earlier when we wanted to buy a house. We've really been able to achieve a lot of wealth in a very short period of time.
So that was the driving force, the awareness your health may not be the best for the rest of your life.
I think it's an awareness that gets lost on a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Looking back on our lives, saying to ourselves, wow, that was much shorter than I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
And I think younger people don't really see that. I would encourage them to get into a lifestyle that allows them to be free one day. And you can still work and be free.
Well, why don't you explain that idea of financial independence, retire early, how the two work together?
The goal is to decide what you need to live on, and then to multiply that by 25. And that's the amount of money that you need in order to live at that level. So it's based on getting, say, a 7% return in the stock market. The idea is that you're going to save up that money. You're going to withdraw 4% of that money per year. If you put your money in, say, a stock index fund, you're going to be getting about 7% on average, 7 or 8%. People who practice fire tenets think that if you save up 25% of your income, you can live on that for the rest of your life. And for the most part, I've analyzed it many different ways, using the S&P 500 as the index, month by month by month, over most of the entirety of that the index has been around. And it's true for the vast majority of the time. It's not true 100% of the time, but it's a pretty safe bet. If it was a parachute, you'd jump out of a plane with it.
Right. Well, let's take an example. Let's say I've decided that I can live in a van for $1,000 a month for the rest of my life. How much money do I need in the bank to live on that?
$1,000 a month would be $12,000 a year. 25 times 12,000.
So you need $300,000 to draw $1,000 a month. And is that on using the 4%?
So you would take 4% of 300,000. That's 12,000 a year.
Right.
I have some other examples that are pretty interesting. If you go on any blog or read anything about the FIRE movement, one of the examples they give is getting rid of your Starbucks and cutting your cable. That's the thing you hear about all the time. How much money will you save over time by getting rid of your cable or not drinking Starbucks? I looked at my own cable, and I can easily save $100 in my cable bills. And if you go to Starbucks, spend $5 a day at Starbucks, 20 working days, maybe a couple on the weekend or whatever, that's about $100. So let's just look at $100. If you took $100 a month and you put it in a stock index fund, 7%, after 10 years, that's going to be $17,740. At 20 years, it's going to be $52,638. And at 30 years, it's going to be $121,000.
That's a whole bunch of money.
That's a lot of money. Now, that's over a lifetime, obviously, right? So you'd have to start, let's say, at 25. By the time you're my age, you've got $121,000. That's just simple math. The question is, how much freedom do you get for that $121,000? And if you're retiring at the $50,000 level, it's going to be $121,000 divided by $137 a day. That's a lot of freedom. That is the amount of freedom that you've gotten just from not drinking that coffee every day or watching that cable.
And if you're young, and if you discipline yourself to never spend it in the first place, you won't even miss it. You won't even know it's gone because it was never there.
Exactly. You may read a book along the way. You may take a walk. You actually may be healthier both in your mind and your body.
Right. If you made that one change in your life as a very young person, everything could change. That enforces the discipline, and it's why you put the graph up. You know, you look at that every day, and that becomes a living thing to you.
So the graph is very important because that's your motivation. That's what you're building. That's your tangible, it's literally the product of your effort. Early on, my wife was, not as happy as I was saving for that house. So in our second savings round, the one after my stroke, I was again doing it. And I noticed my wife was, I had to kind of drag her kicking and screaming a little bit. At some point, I told her, I said, okay, you know what? You do it. You pay the bills, you do the graph, the whole bit. And what I discovered is that she really got into it. The two of you drag a sled up the hill and you get to take the ride down. Do that month after month after month. Your spouse is not having any fun because they don't really see the product. And the product is the graph. It's just it.
Right.
It's the graph.
It's that motivation.
For me, for us, the graph is very important.
Do you mind if I ask what some of your specifics were that you planned?
What some of our specific savings were?
Yeah.
So I just gathered 4 random. One of them was, I never bought a lawnmower. 30 years ago, I went to drop something off at a dump, and there were a bunch of lawnmowers on the side. The guy at the dump told me that they're there because they have to remove the oil and the gas out of them and stuff. And he says, and every single one of them works. So I've never bought a lawnmower. Usually you buy a lawnmower every 10 years. If you were to not buy a lawnmower and take that money and put it in the stock market, you'd save about $3,000 over a life. Another example, shop roof. I needed a roof on my shop. I saved about $10,000. My wife and I did it over a long weekend. And that was and if I would have taken that money, it was about 10 years ago. If I would have taken that money, and I did, put it in the stock market, that was a $16,000 saving. Oil changes. I have never taken my car to an oil change place. I do them all myself. I do all of my car maintenance. Just in oil changes alone, over the last 30 years, I've saved $10,361. I buy my gas at Costco. It's always 20 cents less. I've been doing that for the last 10 years. I've saved about $2,100. Just those 4 pretty simple things. I invested 17 days effort. I saved $31,561 at $137 a day. I gained 230 days of freedom.
Wow.
Like I said, I invest 17 days worth of effort into this and gained $31,561. I don't know anybody who makes $31,561 in 17 days.
No.
But more importantly, it's that freedom number, 230 days. Just those 4 simple things that I literally picked at random, Bob. I said, I'm just going to pick 4 random things. There you go.
Even though you buy your car new, you maintain it and you run it for a very long time. That saves you an amazing amount of money.
If you buy a cheap car, like it's good gas mileage, it's my opinion that you're better off. In the FIRE movement, we talk a lot about saving money, but you also have to make money. One of the things I think you need in order to gain and keep employment over a long period of time and hopefully put your efforts towards making more money is having stable basis, a stable place to live, and a stable vehicle. It helps to have a stable marriage, stable health. Those are all foundations. So I just believe that you need a good car. When you start looking at things from another perspective and you start getting out of the consumerism, you see things from a different angle. You see how silly all of this really is. Your life doesn't have to be so empty that you have to fill it with these endless tchotchkes. There's so much more to life.
Well, that's one of the criticisms of the FIRE movement is that, well, you're going to retire young and you're not contributing to society. You'll have a meaningless, hedonistic life, thinking of yourself. What's your response to that?
What do you mean you're retiring early? Everybody works till they're 65. I think I deserve it. I didn't drive around in the Chrysler 300. I ate pizza rather than maybe something else I might have preferred. I kind of feel like I deserve it. And as far as contributing to society, I think that's kind of a personal thing. People contribute in a lot of different ways. And by the way, my wife and I, we are a very charitable. One of the tenets of our religion, we think that you cannot obtain financial independence if you don't give some of that away. As far as we're concerned, it's the way the universe works. People can give in a lot of different ways. You don't have to give to charity. You can give your time. Giving your time to other people contributes to society. I don't necessarily equate consumerism with laziness. I just don't. I am by no means a lazy man. Nobody's ever accused me of that. I work pretty hard, and my wife works even harder than I do. You have an entire society that's based on consumerism, looking at screens all day, and you have to wither that criticism. The core of it is freedom from the relentless advertising and the clock.
So you were just naturally a frugal savings person. You adapted that pretty early. Then your health scare really forced you to go hard at it. You wanted to because you never know how long you have to live. That's an idea all of us should have all the time. And it's sad that it takes a health scare to make us think that way. Have you used the FIRE resources to learn about FIRE and apply the principles?
No, I pretty much knew what to do. You know, Bob, my wife and I both had the good fortune to grow up in abject poverty. We understand what it's like being cold, being hungry, and that kind of stuff. We learned that at a very early age. So there's a lot of motivation for us to not end up in that situation. And we've always been really good at savings. I don't use any of the resources, but what resources I have seen, some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. I think that performance is the best measure. Currently, my savings rate, I can't imagine I'm going to do any better. We've always been pretty independent and wanted to do things our way. So I haven't used any of the resources, but there are plenty out there. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of people do need those resources.
Right.
Take the stock market, for example. It's not complicated. There's shared ownership in companies through stocks. Companies make money, and the stock goes up. It's really that simple. Or it goes down. The reason it's complicated to invest is because there are a group of people that regulate that door and make it complicated and make it so you have to use them and have to pay them to get access. Financial advisors, stockbrokers, all kinds of people. And Vanguard is a fund or series of funds that charges very low fees, very, very low fees. I think that Vanguard fund I'm in is 12/100ths%. That's what they charge you. Most other funds are, a point and a half. It's very simple. What you do is you take your money, you put it in an index fund, indexed to, say, the S&P 500, low-cost index fund. That would be through Vanguard. And it's literally that simple. You call them, you get an account, you start putting your money in. Do that. Don't even look at the stock market. Just put the money in. Over time, you're going to be fine. You put your money in, you bet on it. There are some things that can go wrong. There are risks with everything. Nuclear war, civil unrest.
Asteroid.
But when you start talking about those kind of things, your money's going to be worthless anyway.
An index fund has proven to be the single most reliable thing you can do with your money. Always recovers and grows more.
Somebody's trying to sell you on a fund or to buy a certain stock or something. Just get a low-cost index fund. They're all low-cost. Put your money in, and that's it. That's the stock market. That's what you need to do.
For a lot of people, they need the simplicity of a percentage. Are you trying to follow a percentage of your income that you put in savings?
We're not, only because our income has fluctuated over this last savings time. Specifically, it's been going up. I'll give you an example. So we noticed that we were saving a lot of money. Now is a good time to buy a new car. Again, a simple car, good gas mileage, And then we also decided to put solar on our house. And that's a twofold thing. Number one, it's the smart thing to do, I think, because overall it's going to pay for itself. And also it's the ecologically right thing to do. So it's tough under these circumstances with fluctuating incomes to set a percentage. And even if we had set a percentage, we would have gone well beyond that just because our income has gone up. But I would strongly encourage people to use a percentage. I think you should fund your savings first. If you can, do the graph like I was talking about earlier when I needed to save $30,000 to get into a house. So here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. Draw a line between the two and stay above the line.
Right. Whatever that amount is for you, and different people with different income levels, that amount will always be different. But the line and staying above it can be realistic.
I'm sure there are people that once they see, hey, I can stay above that line, they might increase the trajectory. They may go for a higher goal to stay above that line. I know some people who are doing it currently who have moved the line up several times. This is your lifestyle. I'm saving for freedom. I want to be financially independent.
And if you set your mind to living frugal and saving, you can be really good at that.
If you care at all about the planet, a lot of young people, a lot of millennials today, they're interested in saving the planet they're going to live on.
Literally.
Literally. Living frugally is in line with that.
Absolutely. And when the question comes up, well, aren't you not contributing to society? One of my answers is that everything you do not buy contributes to the planet. It may not directly contribute to American society, but it contributes to the well-being of the planet and therefore to American society. Every item you don't buy is a huge contribution to the welfare of the entire planet.
Getting back to tenets of the FIRE movement and another thing I don't agree with, and I'm only going to talk about the few things that I don't agree with. Everything else I'm in full agreement with. I agree that if you save 25%, 25 times what you want to live on, you can live on that for the rest of your life. Yeah. In the vast majority of cases, yes, absolutely. One of the things I don't agree with is they say, look at all of your debts and pay off the high interest ones first. Mathematically, that is the absolute best advice to give. And by and large, the FIRE movement gives the absolute best advice. A lot of times it's in a sterile and perfect world. In a sterile and perfect world, you should pay off the highest interest. In my mind, though, if you're just starting out, you should pay off the smallest debts first. And the reason you do that is because you need that psychological boost.
Right.
You need those small successes. The reason why soldiers make their bed first thing in the morning is because it's an early success. You've accomplished something. So for the same reason, I think that you should start off paying your smallest debt first. You get a couple of those successes under your belt, and then maybe you can get a little more sophisticated and say, okay, now I'm going to start being smart about it because I've already shown myself that I can be successful. And a lot of people, especially in the realm of finances, need success because over the last 30 years, they haven't experienced any, for the most part.
I think a lot of that, too, you see the snowballing, compounding effect. You pay off a small one, now you're paying double on the next big one. You can actually see that. A lot of FIRE people will go with real estate. They will invest in real estate, either buy it and turn it over or use it as rental income. Are you going to use your house as rental income?
Two things about the real estate. First, we're going to sell our house. Listen, the smart thing to do would actually be to rent it. We would get a little bit more money than we would just taking the money and putting it into, say, the stock market. But fortunately, we have a house that's worth a lot of money, and I just don't want to be bothered with tenants and then being so far away. I want true freedom. I don't want a phone call. For most people, that would probably be okay. And it's really the smart thing to do. So yeah, real estate is really a great vehicle.
Well, David, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your experience. I really appreciate it. Really can apply this to anyone, young or old. So thank you.
You're welcome, Bob. Great to meet you.
So folks, I hope you got something out of this video. Go to Walmart, buy a piece of graph paper. One corner, start with a date, and the other top corner, put the amount of money you want to get saved, draw a line in between, stay above that line. That's some great advice. So folks, thanks for watching this video. Like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk.